first time you use the EYFS Tracker, the first thing you'll need to do is to import or enter some children's data. To do that, you can click on the My Children option up here. If I scroll down, I can see, because I've already used the system, I've already got some children's information in here. The information about your children is split onto two main tabs. We've got the main details tab here and also additional details here. Every time you're looking at a list of children in the system, you need to be looking at what filters or what options are in these drop downs at the top. So I'm looking at the 2018-19 academic year. I'm currently filtering for my nursery year group, and then I've also got these options for teaching groups and support types, which will be the subject of a later video. When I click on my year group drop down, you can see I can select all year groups if I want to, or I can select a particular year group. If you're a nursery setting or a PVI setting, then you may just only be able to see this all year groups option here. So I'm going to look at my nursery group. I can see I've got 7 young people listed underneath. If I click on any of these headers, it will sort the information. So let's say I want to click by first name. I can click on the first name header here, or by surname, or equally I could click on gender, and indeed any of these other headers across here, and it will sort top to bottom, or you click it again, and it will sort in the other direction. If I want to enter new information, enter a new child, I can do that in the yellow section down here. All I have to do as a minimum is enter my name. UPN is mandatory if you want to use the system to return your foundation stage profile result. But if you don't need to do that, you don't need to add in UPN. But you also need to add in date of birth. And this is essential because a lot of the information in the tracker is based on your age in months. So this is a really important part of the system. So once you've added the minimum information, which as I say is first name, surname and date of birth, you can click Save Changes and that child will be added. I'll do that now. So now Steve is shown in the bottom of the list. That child has automatically been added into the year group that we've selected here. You can change that year group if you put it into the wrong year group. I'll show you how to do that now. In the pupil status option on the right hand side, if I click on the tick, 2 options appear. The first one says mark as left setting, and the other one says change child year group. If I click on change child year group, I can then say, okay, well, you put this person into nursery. If I've said actually I want to put them into reception, I can click on that and save changes. Click close. And I can see Steve has now disappeared from this list. If I go and select reception here, and click refresh, always remember to click refresh to update the filters. Then Steve's now appeared in this list here. If I ever want to edit any of the information, I can do so from this section up here. So let's say I can put my gender in, I can do that here. Or if I made a mistake in my date of birth, change that. I can also put in my ethnicity. These are the set of DFE codes that they use. I can put in my language. When you enter language, you've got 2 options. If I wasn't an English speaker, I can either say that I'm not English, which groups all my people who don't speak English together, or if I wanted to, I can select their specific language. We normally recommend that you use this not English and English categorization at the top, because that's going to group a lot of young people together, and that'll be more useful for your analysis. You can also put in the date of entry of a child. That will affect information such as what time periods you're expecting analysis and results information to go into. So that's the main details section. And then I can click on the additional details. And I get more information here. Again, the first name and surname is shown. Postcode, again, this is optional. If you are entering your foundation stage profile results, you do have to put your postcode in. If you don't, or you're not doing that, then you don't need to include that. You can also include whether they've got any special educational needs, And if they have, you can state whether they have a particular primary need. So let's say Steve had an EHCP, and I can select what their primary need is. Let's say it's physical disability. Now, one thing you'll notice when you're making changes to this page and in the results section, which we'll look at later, the information automatically saves into the system. Once I've made a change here and I click anywhere else, a little icon appears in the top left which says saving saved, a little yellow icon, and that shows that it's saving as we're going along. We do also add a save changes button over here just in case. So we recommend that you use that, but really the changes will save as you go along. The other information you can get from this page, if I go back to main details, I've got a few options over here. I've got next steps, which is where you talk about the next steps for the development of this child, and I've also got what says COEL, which is characteristics of effective learning, and that's if I need to put in that for my to provide a whole picture of my child. Those two bits of information can appear on a learning journey report, which will be the subject of a different video. There's one final thing to talk about on this page, which is if you need to delete somebody. So let's say I entered Steve in error. I can delete them, or maybe Steve has now left my school or setting and I want to get rid of them. There's two ways of looking at this. Firstly, if I go to the pupil status tick mark over here on Steve's record, first tab says Marker's left settings. Marker's left settings, Steve Preston. You've got two options here. You can either delete them completely, which I select deleted up here, and then it says, do you want to keep a copy of the child's data on our system or completely remove the child from the system? The only reason you'd want to keep a copy of the child's data on the system is if you put in results information for that child, but they've now left your school or setting, but you want to be able to go back and review that. If I've entered that child in error, or maybe we thought they were going to join but didn't, then I'll select completely remove this child from the system. Let's say for Steve, they have been in our setting for a while and we want to keep the history of their results. We'll keep a copy of the child's data on our system. We have to check this information down here before we make this change, which says final academic year, 2018-19, and final term. Let's say the last assessment we've made for Steve was in the summer. I'd want to change that to 17-18. Let's say summer 2. And then when I click save, that will mean it will save all my data for Steve up until the end of the summer 2 assessment period. So let's do that now. Now see that Steve is greyed out, which basically means he's not in the system for 2018, but he did exist in the system prior to that. I've also got this option here which says leave as hidden or leave as shown. If I want to remove or not show young people who left the setting a while ago, I can make sure that it says leave as hidden. If I refresh now, we'll see that Steve will disappear. So he's gone, which is particularly useful if you're a school and you've got, let's say, 60 children every year disappearing from the system and you don't want a long list of children appearing on your My Children page. If I go back and show leave as shown again and click refresh, Steve's back there again. If I've deleted Steve in error, I can go back and click on this pupil status cross. And there'll be an option to reinstate the child, which I can do here. I'll do that now. And Steve's now back in the system. I mentioned before we can do two types of deleting. So the other option we could have is to delete them permanently from the system, which I'll show you now. So if I click on that tick, again, select deleted, and then completely remove this child from the EYFS Tracker, and click save. Now Steve's gone completely, so they are off the system entirely, which means you won't be able to go back and get a history of their data.